Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and I have a question for you. Are you an n8n user? You've tried to create workflow automations on their cloud service, and after 2 weeks of using their trial, you have run out of trials or credit, and you have to pay to start using more of this n8n and more of their workflows. But what if I told you there is a way where you can actually, on your local machine, you can deploy a local instance of n8n that you can run in your machine that has no accounts or limitations that you can use forever, and that you can also run and access from anywhere in the world. So for example, I'm going to type n8n.parametric.camp, which I just configured, and then I'm going to access now a version of n8n that is living in my machine. And what I've created this really simple workflow to create an endpoint for post requests, accept a JSON file, and then generate a random joke using artificial intelligence, right? And actually, I'm going to show you, I can make a post request to this URL that is based on my n8n.parametric-camp. I can send a JSON, hey, give me a joke about programming, and then boom, it's going to send it, and then the generation just created this random joke for me. Okay, so what does this mean? There is a way to install n8n locally, run it through your machine, open it up to the entire world so that you can open it up to the entire world and then automate and allow apps to use the automations that you have on your local instance and that you can run forever. Isn't this cool? You want to know how to do this? It's actually really simple. Let me show you. Before we get hands-on, what is n8n actually? n8n is what people refer to as a workflow, a cloud-based workflow automation tool, or some people call it flowgramming or flow programming. It's basically, if you're familiar with Grasshopper, it's basically Grasshopper for automating online processes. What that means is that it gives you this drag and drop flow-based interface where every box is a function or a connection or some kind of operation. You connect them with wires that represents data flowing through these operations, and then you can create complex workflows by daisy chaining these operations in this kind of like graph manner. So it's cloud-based. It's very interesting because it's very powerful when it comes to integration. So you can integrate all the Google products, Slack, all this stuff. And then specifically, which is what I'm interested in, you can connect to a lot of AI API services and create AI-based automations. For example, you can submit a form, have the AI do something with the form, and then post the result to Slack, or you can do some kind of like virus checking and scanning, connecting to IPs, or you can do more complex, like there is a GET request, and then you process the request with an AI, and then you churn out some information based on that, or you can do sales processing, whichever this means, I don't know, right? But what's interesting is that it basically allows you to create complex workflows as if you were using Grasshopper, but mostly for data and for integrations with third-party applications, including AI models, right? So why do we want to install it locally? So it does have a cloud service. So if you go to n8n.com or .io, you will find a dashboard and you can do, so where is my dashboard? So you will find that, where is my dashboard? Okay, so yes, so you can find your local, you can find your global, your cloud instance where you have your automations. And this is, for example, a simple API to generate jokes with ChatGPT that I created in a live stream that I did a few days ago, right? So the cloud version of n8n is actually really good. It's very useful. And then things live in the cloud and it's very easy to connect to them. The problem with n8n is that the free tier is very restrictive as of November of 2025, which is when we're recording this video. When you sign in for a free account, you only get 2 weeks of free n8n, and after 2 weeks, everything just freezes and you can't modify, you can't run these automations, you can't run the workflows. It's very limiting. And as you can see, I tried it for the first time last week or 2 weeks ago, and now it's inactive. And if you want to upgrade and if you want to keep using it, I mean, it's not terribly expensive, but it's also not cheap compared to other cloud services. So what's very interesting though is that n8n somehow is open source. So what's very attractive to me is that if you go to their GitHub page, the main n8n framework is somehow available to just use, deploy, and run it locally in your own machine without the need for that cloud account or that cloud service that lives in the n8n servers somewhere in Germany, I believe, right? So if you want to tinker, if you want to practice, and if you want to run automations that actually live in a computer that you control, you can deploy and install this locally, and then you have full, unlimited, unrestricted control of the n8n on your local machine. So this is what I would like to teach you how to do today in this video, because after tinkering a little bit, it's actually incredibly easy. It's very, very straightforward, and it's very gratifying because as you know from previous videos, like for example, how to install LLMs on your local machine and a card is going to pop up on the corner, or how to use a web UI interface to connect to local LLMs on your machine, and a card is going to pop up as well to the link in that video. Running AI-based service or running any services locally in your computer, it's nice, it's satisfying, you have all the power, you have all the control, the data stays secure in your machine, it's not in someone else's server, so it's great. And the fact that they made it very, very easy to install and deploy, it's a huge, huge plus. So if anyone from n8n is hearing, big thumbs up, huge fan of being able to do this. I haven't used the local version enough to be able to tell you with detail what are the differences between using the local version versus the global one, sorry, the cloud one. I don't know if the cloud one has more features or it has some other integrations that you cannot use locally, but after my experimentation, everything that I wanted to do, I could do it with the local version, no issues. So it's a very good starting point, and I'm going to show you in this video how to install it locally. So let's take a look at that. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to install Node.js on your system. If you already have it, that's great. If you don't know what Node.js is, I actually have a couple videos about what Node is and how to install it. The links to those videos, there's going to be a card popping up here in the corner, and there's going to be a link to those videos in the description of this video here. Also, full disclaimer, how to install Node.js. This video is ridiculously old. I made it like 4 years ago. Node.js is like 10 versions higher right now. It's like 24. But long story short, if you're on a Windows machine, you can just simply come here, download the installer, double click and say yes to everything, and then that will install Node.js on your system. Everything that I'm going to explain in this video also works for Mac and for Linux. So if you're a Mac user, the only thing that will change is how you install Node.js, and you can just go here and figure out different ways of doing this. But I leave that up to you because I don't have a Mac to show you how to do it. Okay. And then once you install Node.js, you can open a terminal by right clicking on your desktop and using Windows Terminal here, or by doing search on your system and type in terminal, which is showing in my other monitor. I apologize about that. So Windows, exactly. What will happen is that if you have correctly installed it, you should be able to click Node, and then this interactive REPL will show up for you. One note to keep in mind is that when I was testing things for this video, I found out that installing version Node 24 did not work with n8n, so I had to downgrade to version 22.21.1 long-term service. All right, so if you are experiencing errors in running n8n as of November 2025, as of the recording of this video, I had issues with Node 24, so I am running Node 22, and that solved the issues. Okay, beautiful. So if you go, sorry, CLS to clean the screen. If you go to the GitHub page, you'll see that it basically says this is just as simple as installing locally with npx. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Node, Node has a thing called the Node Package Manager, NPM, which you use to install packages on projects locally and globally. But it also has this npx, which is basically a one-click install and run packages globally on your system that you can use to try things out and run it once without installing everything on your system. Sort of, not exactly like that, but kind of. So installing and running once n8n on your machine is literally as simple as going to your terminal, typing npx n8n, and hitting enter. This will ask you, do you want to download and install blah 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 something. It's not doing that for me because I just did that before. So I guess n8n is already cached on my system, but in your case it will ask you, do you want to download blah blah blah. It will take like a few minutes, and then boom, you will get something very similar to this. The npx n8n command is the same no matter if you're running Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, right? Beautiful. Okay, so what that means is that n8x is actually running on my machine right now. How do I know that? Because it's saying the editor is available on localhost 5678. What that means is that I can now go to localhost and then 55678 on any browser, and then I will access my new fresh installation of n8n. It's gonna ask me to create an account, so I'm gonna be like foo@gmail.com, me, this is gonna be Jose Luis, and then some password, which I don't really care, and then next, and I don't need any of these. You can also subscribe to the paid features. That basically there are some free features that require you to register, but long, uh, but sufficient to say that now this is running on my machine. Okay, and anytime that I go to localhost 5678, then I will access a local installation of n8n, and then I can just start a new workflow by adding, I don't know, I'm gonna add a webhook here, and this is okay. So now I have the webhook, etc., and I can click and install it. If you have tinkered with the cloud version before and it has expired to you, you can download the cloud version of your you can download geez, you can go in, you can open the instance, you can go to the workflow that you're interested in, and somewhere here you can download this as a JSON file, okay? And now on my local, I can go to overview, and I can import from a file, and I can import this file that I just downloaded, and boom, it shows up. I'm gonna remove the folder, and it shows up. So whatever you had on the cloud version, you can import it on your local version now, okay? Fantastic. Now, one thing I want to highlight or remember everyone is that this local host and n8n running locally on your machine depends on this terminal window being open, so that the process is running on your machine. If at some point I do Control C and I stop this terminal, or I just shut down the terminal, what you will notice is that the connection is lost and that n8n is not running on your local host anymore. Okay, so, so just to keep that in mind. If you want to have a machine that is running n8n and that is permanently running the workflows, you will have to open a terminal, you have to trigger n8n, and you would just have to leave the terminal window open. Okay, now I'm going to open a terminal again. Their npx is basically meant to be one-off calls to modules. But if you're going to be substantially and consistently using n8n, there is a better recommended way of running of installing, which is permanently installing the module as a global module. What that means is that if you go to the documents in n8n, what they do is that they recommend, yes, you can try it without installing it by using npx, or you can install it permanently and using npm, the Node Package Manager. So we're going to do that. I'm going to say npm, I want to install the module called n8n, and I want to make sure that it's global, that it's accessible to any user on my machine. Maybe actually not any user, but the user that I made, but from any folder, and right? So what this is going to do is it's going to download n8n, and it's going to install it as a global package. All right, so it's going to download it, so maybe it's going to take a minute, and it did take a couple minutes, but now we have the module installed globally. So we're also going to install, as mentioned in the instructions, we're also going to install globally this n8, the next module for n8n, all right, which I'm assuming is some kind of module that is required for n8n to work. I actually don't understand or know why that is necessary, but we're just going to do it anyway. So maybe this will take another minute. And this took another couple minutes, but it's now done. So what is the result now? I can type CLS to clear the screen, but now, because we installed n8n globally as a package, you can think of n8n as a program that lives on your machine now. So I can type n8n literally on the terminal, and that will start the process that lives in the local host, and that will make accessible localhost 5678, and that will make n8n accessible to me here. I'm going to do the same thing, import from URL, import from file. Here, I'm gonna save it, and then boom. Now, you see, and now it's live here. And then, because this is permanent now, if I stop and I relaunch the service, n8n, I will have the same user account. I will have the file that I saved, hopefully, yes, the workflow that I saved here living globally. Okay, beautiful. So now, if you remember from my live stream, I made this really simple example where I created an automation that takes in a post request with a JSON file saying, give me a joke of this kind of topic. And then if the format of the input is proper, then it uses ChatGPT to generate a joke, and it responds to the post request with the joke, right? So a way to test that is to use, for example, Postman, or to use a console post request. The JSON file is the username, whether if I want to create a joke, and the topic, and then I send this request locally, and something is not working. Oh yes, sorry, because I have to actually turn this on and make it active. Okay, so now that it's active, now it's listening to those requests. So I'm going to send this, and you can see that after a little bit of processing, the response is the joke. Why did the parametric designer break up with the model? Because it kept changing parameters and wouldn't commit. That's actually not a terrible joke. Anyway, now what I want to highlight is that this workflow automation is working on my machine, and the URL to access the workflow is on localhost blah blah blah, and the URL to send the information to get the joke is also to send the post request is one that starts with the localhost. What that means in practical terms, and that's the one that I've used here in Postman, that means in practical terms is that this automation is going to work in my local machine and is going to be accessible for any process that lives in my local machine. So for example, I could connect Grasshopper and have Grasshopper send a request to n8n, process the joke and get the joke back. And actually, maybe we can make a video about that now that I'm thinking about it. But I may want to open up this service, the random joke creation, to any other machine outside of my local network to access this automation. Or in other words, I may want to make this automation globally accessible with a URL that is not depending on my local host, or in other words, that is not linked to just my machine, right? The way to do that is by making sure that we can provide a public URL in the world and redirect that URL to the port in my local machine that is running this automation. The way to do that is one way to do that is by using tunneling, right? And tunneling is basically a way to create a public URL that points to a service that is living locally on a machine. I have two videos on the Fun with AI playlist on how to do network tunneling and how to create a permanent URL for that network tunnel. So the link to these videos is going to be in the description of this video. And I'm going to show you real quick how to do that now. So my goal is to be able to install in some way, in some manner, a way to type n8n.parametric.camp, which is a domain that I own, and then be redirected to the local workflows and the local n8n deployment that I am running right now. So the way I'm going to do that is I have parametric.camp managed inside of Cloudflare. So even though I actually own it with some kind of some other register domain, the DNS is managed by Cloudflare. And I actually explained how to do that in the videos that I pointed to before. So on Zero Trust, I'm going to create a new tunnel. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Networks and Tunnels, and I'm going to create a new tunnel to the machine that I am right now. I'm going to select a Cloudflare. I'm going to write here Beast Machine, just because Beast is the name that I've given to this machine. I already have Cloudflared, the service, installed in my system. So the only thing that I need to do is install this token, the token for this tunnel. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go to a new terminal. I'm going to paste this in the terminal, and then the tunnel that I just created is now connected to this machine that I am on right now. And you can verify that by seeing that we are just connected, right? And then I'm going to click next. And then this is where I'm going to configure the subdomain of my tunnel, or in other words, the n8n. So I'm going to type here, I want to choose parametric camp as a domain. I want the subdomain to be n8n. All right. And then that's the external URL. And I want to connect it to a service that I'm going to be running on my machine. Remember, that was localhost 5678. Okay. The moment I do this, I can complete the setup, and then hopefully, where is this? Complete the setup, and hopefully everything has been created, everything is healthy, which basically means that n8n, if I go here to Brain Desktop, sorry, not that one. If I go to Beast Machine, edit, and publish application routes, we can see that this route is now linked to the process that is living locally on this port. So therefore, I should be able to now hit n8n.parametric-camp, and boom, I am accessing the local deployment of n8n. And even though I am in my machine, the way I'm accessing the local process is right now through an external URL. So I could go with my laptop to the library, to the cafe, whatever, and I could still type this and you could access. If you're watching this video in the future and if you type n8n.parametric-camp, if I left the process living, then you might actually hit a wall with like a login information that you don't have because I'm not going to give you logins to my machine. And if you are right now on the live stream, you can actually type this and it should be able to work right now. Now, what I want to do now is remember how I was using a local URL to perform this? What I should be able to do now is I should be able to now access that process using a global URL. So for the post, instead of pointing at localhost blah blah blah, now I can replace that with n8n at parametric-camp, send the key, and I should be able to get the response. You see? Yes, Northeastern University, why the Northeastern ring, something, something, I don't know. All right? But it works. And what this also means is that now the n8n joke generator, the workflow that I've programmed on my machine, is now open and usable and accessible to anyone that knows how to send a post request to this exact URL that I am providing right now on my machine. What this also means is that you basically created an automation that everyone in the world can access and can use. Now, a word of caution, this automation is linked to ChatGPT with an API key that I am paying for. So every time someone, you or someone else, does a request, there is some money that you're going to pay to access the ChatGPT service. So be careful who you share these things with and make sure that you only share it with people that you want to use, or that you somehow add some kind of like API or credential system to the post request, which is a bit more of an advanced topic, but that you can also do. All right. Beautiful. So that is fantastic. And thank you very much. And if you like what you saw, please maybe like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hopefully we'll be posting more videos on how to make nice, cool, nerdy things with AI, automations, code, and design. Thank you very much and see you on the next video. Bye bye.